Good afternoon. I'm Mike Haggerty. I'm alongside with Mike Clayton, and we've got another edition of our very special Coaches Council Heads Up podcast. And we've got a super guest ahead of a very, very big competition. Coach Terry Steiner is joining us. Coach, it's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and Mike.
Yep, we've coined that accidentally, but we'll just run with it. So, Coach, we've got it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. But real importantly, I think the big question is right on the eve of one of the most important events that we've had in a long time in USA Wrestling is our Olympic trials, which are coming up very quickly here at Fort Worth. Can you give us just a general overview of what your expectations are and what this means to you?
Well, first, I'm just going to start off and say it's my least favorite event ever. And it really is, because when you walk away from the Olympic trials, when you walk away from the world team trials, it's different because next year is not so far away. When you walk away from the Olympic trials, a lot of times athletes are aging out, right? And when they're done, they're either on the team or they're maybe finished competing, some of them. And so it's really hard because you leave there with 6 happy people, right? And there's a lot of just frustrated, discouraged, and upset people. And so it's one of the hardest competitions as a national coach, I think, to be a part of. And because you're just a bystander, right? You're just waiting to see what the results happen, and then from there we go to work. But there's so many kids along the way that you build relationships with, and that some of them are not going to leave there happy. And so I always tell the athletes before the trials, like if I'm at the Olympic trials and it seems like I'm avoiding you, I probably am. Because you don't want to, you want to be unbiased to everyone. You don't want to think, if you're talking to one athlete, you don't want the other athlete to think you're taking sides or favorites or this or that. And that's really this is their job, right? To decide what the team is. My job is to coach the team once it's there and to give them all the tools to be ready for the trials. But once the trials happens, it's really in their hands and let them, just may the best person win at the time. And so it really is a tough competition from a national coach perspective. But it's, I think it's one of the true treasures of USA is as we don't decide it as a coaching staff or an organization. The athletes are out there and they decide who the team is. And from that, we have a pretty good, this time around, I believe we have a very deep, talented pool. So whoever does make the team, we think that they're ready to win a medal in Tokyo. And so we know that they're tested and proven and they're ready to go. And that's all we can really hope for, right? Is that we go into the games healthy. And I think if we go into the games healthy, we're going to have a great time in Tokyo, and no matter who is on our team. And so that's the goal, is just kind of stay out of their way, give them some direction, and let's go in healthy and let it go. So,
Coach, from a national coach's perspective, what is your message to the team, the 6 gals that make the team, and then what's your message to those that don't make the team? I mean, I know that you're playing this unbiased role to start and going into the competition, but what quickly would be your message to those that make the team, and then the message to those that don't make the team?
Well, to those that make the team, just to understand the unbelievable opportunity they have in front of them. And I think they realize that. Right? If they make the Olympic team, they understand there's a huge opportunity in front of them. But I think it's very easily you can turn that opportunity into a burden if you're looking at it the wrong way, right? And I think you just need to say that, yeah, there's a great challenge in front of me. To most people, to think about being an Olympic champion is a far-off dream, right? It's a pipe dream. But to those 6 people, it will be a reality that it's very close to grabbing that Olympic medal and that Olympic title. And so I think it's just to understand that, you know, they're representing a lot more than themselves, that they're representing a sport, they're representing an organization and a country, along with their family name and their hometowns and everything like that. So they should build energy off of that, and you know, and then just let them know that we're unbelievably proud of them, going in, and regardless of what happens, you know, you don't need a medal around your neck to be a champion, right? And for these people that made the Olympic team, they're already champions through and through. Right now, it's just going to test yourself against the best in the world, and let's see what we can do, and really bring that excitement and that passion for the opportunity in front of them. I think is my whole goal once the Olympic team is set, and for those others that didn't make it, right? I think it's very important for them to realize that they're a huge part of it. Right? They're a huge part of any success that these 6 people have, and that the program has, and they've been, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that maybe never win an Olympic medal, but they've helped people win an Olympic medal, and they've helped people be successful, and they're going to be successful in their lives in other ways, and so just to feel the pride and be a part of it, right, and cheer these people on, because there's going to come a day when they're going to look back on it, and they're going to have really good feelings about 2021 and the Olympic Games in Tokyo, and regardless if they were the athlete representing us or not, and so, and then, you know, you always have to keep those number 2 and 3 people. They have to be ready to go, because injuries happen, right, and things happen, and we always, you know, you can have the opportunity in front of you and not be ready, and that's the worst case, you know, the worst thing that could happen. So I think it's keeping everyone engaged mentally, right, and keeping everyone pushing forward, and so that's another goal, is to keep everyone engaged regardless of the opportunity, and to realize that, again, that winning and losing a wrestling match is such a small part of what we're doing, right? I mean, the true riches of the sport, they've already won, right? And the discipline and the life lessons and dealing with adversity and those kind of things that wrestling gives us, they've already learned how to cope with life's biggest challenges through their pursuit of excellence in this sport. And so I think that you got to bring it back to that level, I think, for them to see any kind of good in it, if they walk away from the Olympic trials without the championship in hand.
Jerry, you bring up a really good point. A lot of us naturally are probably focused on the winners and those that are going to go on to represent. How big of a role do you and your national team staff play in picking up the pieces? Because, like you said, you've got such great depth and you're building, right, always building for the future. How big a role is your national team staff in helping to pick up the pieces for those that don't qualify, their private coaches, and then themselves as athletes, for the coaches out there, you know, that just finished state and maybe their teams didn't do as well? How would you as a coach kind of see that?
Well, I think it's of huge importance, right? You have to understand that this is a process, right? And the process of winning requires many failures along the way, right? And you have to learn to deal with failure and disappointment in the right way, and that it can move you forward instead of hold you back, right? And so, you know, I was, and you know, on the international side of it, I was never on the winning side of it, right? As far as making the world team or making the Olympic team. So I have dealt with it. I have dealt with the frustration and the discouragement but I know it's not the end of the world as well, right? And I know that the things I learned when I was going through it, the things I learned from the sport of wrestling and the things that wrestling gave me were far greater than what I missed out on, right? And so I really want to bring that to those athletes and help them understand that. And so I think we have a huge role to play in that, right? Because just like on any high school team or college team, not everyone is going to be your champion, but they are a huge part of the success of a program. and building of a dynasty and those kind of things, because you need that involvement, right? You need that involvement from your alumni and your past performers and things like that, and you need them involved along the way to help shorten the process for the next generation, right? And so you really want to keep those people involved and engaged, and not leaving the sport unhappy, right? I always think that as a coach and a staff, that our goal has to be to have lifelong involvement from our athletes, right? We don't just want them for 4, 6, or 8 or 10 years. We want them for a lifetime, right? And we want them to be a part of this family forever, and to take what they've learned from it and move it forward, and come back to it and share the knowledge. And so I think it's hard. It's a really hard time because, once the Olympic trials are over, for the next 3-4 months, right, those 6 people are definitely the focus of the staff. But there's enough downtime within those training camps and within those days that we have to spend some time with people that are around that didn't make it, right? And to lift their spirits up and help them realize that it's not the end of the world, and they still play a valuable part in the program that we're in. So a huge part of it, right? And again, winning or losing isn't going to change my mind about many people, right? I mean, what you see on a daily basis is what your perceptions are formed on, and things like that, and whether they win or lose next week in Texas, it really is not going to make a big difference to me, right? It's just let's go back and deal with it where we're at that point in time.
Coach, what is right now with women's wrestling, and what needs to get better? What's good about it, and what needs to get better?
Well, we have a lot of things going right? I mean, we have unbelievable growth right now in the sport of wrestling, unprecedented, and we've never seen anything like this before, and how we're growing. But we're still 20 states away from having every state involved, right? We're still, we have emerging sports status within Division 1, 2, and 3 and NAIA at the college level, but we still don't have those championships. We still don't have those major schools behind the sport. And so, we have a lot of work to do yet. We have a lot of work to keep that growing and keep it moving forward. And we need help, right? That doesn't happen with a staff of people, right? That happens from a country of people working in the same direction, and people working in their local areas to make that happen. And so, we want to continue that growth and continue to move it forward, and continue to open up the opportunities for young girls across the country at all levels of wrestling, right? And we know as coaches and lifelong advocates of the sport of wrestling, we know the benefits of this sport, right? And we know that how it can help our generation and the next generation of people coming. And in a society like we live in today, we know that the world needs wrestling, right? And we know we need this sport to develop human beings that can handle life as it comes to us. And even this week, right, and in Boulder, we have another horrible tragedy because someone's not handling the adversities of life the right way, right? And we know what this sport can teach us, and that's the benefit of sport, right? Because it's so in your face and it hurts so much, but that's not the important thing. It's how we deal with it, right? It's how we deal with the losses, how we deal with the setback and the heartbreak and things like that. Those are the important things, and we have to have those tools because we know that life is going to hit us hard, right? And we just have to know how to pick ourselves up from those hard falls, right? And that's the important thing. So that's really what the purpose. the goal is one thing, you know, I always say this, the goal is one thing, and that's easily given to us by USA Wrestling and the U.S. Olympic Committee, is they want Olympic medals, right? But the mission has to be a lot larger than that. The mission of what we're teaching young people has to be larger than medals and championships, right? It has to be these lessons that we can take on for the rest of our lives. And you know, I always say that wrestling hasn't just impacted me. It's impacted my family, my wife, my daughter, you know, and it's going to impact my daughter's kids someday, my grandkids. I mean, there's not a doubt in my mind, because she's been so ingrained in the sport of wrestling since birth, that it's going to have the same benefit. And I wish that on everyone, because I know what it's given me in my life, and the direction and the ability to deal with adversity and heartbreak and setback. I mean, that's just part of the process, right? And it's a part of every day in the sport of wrestling. And but most people don't learn how to deal with that, right? They just get thrown into it. And you know, the thing I love about the sport is, here we see it every day. We see someone fall on their face, and we help them get back up and show them the right way to stand back up and handle it, right? And there's nothing more important than that in life, I don't think. And so I'm just happy to be in the position I am to do it.
You're kind of cornered on this call because you've got a former and a current coach educator, and then you're starting to talk about that learning process. You're a gold certified coach with us, and you helped encourage Emma Randall to become the first female gold certified coach with USA Wrestling. How important is your journey of being an open-minded coach and being a continuous learner? How important has that been to you? And then how would you maybe encourage others out there to kind of take those first steps towards being that kind of continuous learner?
Well, I don't ever want to be the reason someone doesn't succeed, right? And that's how I look at it, right? I don't want to be in the roadblock in the way, right? And I want to know if there's a stone that I need to overturn that has been unturned, and there's a better way of doing things or a different way of doing things, then I want to learn it, right? And I want to understand it. And I think you've got to drop your ego, right? I think we think that, well, I'm a great coach, I can coach anyone. That's not right, right? There's no one person that's the best coach for every single person out there, right? And if there's someone better in your staff or your community that can reach that kid in your wrestling room, then you need to get them involved, and you need to put that kid with that coach, right? And I think that you have to learn, you have to continue to learn, right? But I think as wrestling coaches, we have to drop our egos too, right? We can't be the best for everyone, right? And there's so many great coaches out there, and so many great people that can be a part of your staffs that are better than you at certain things. You know, you have to get them involved and let them help where they can help the best. And I think it's that's the biggest thing I think I take from, is I know that I'm limited in certain things, right? I know I have my limitations as a coach, and I know there's people that are better at other things and better for other people around our program, and you just need to make sure you're connecting the dots on that and putting people in the right positions in the right places. But you have to continue to learn. I mean, how I did things as an athlete when I was in college or when I was on the international scene, it changes, and there's better ways of doing things, right? Progress happens, and you have to continue to learn. And there's certain staples that may stay the same. You still need grit. You still need to work hard. You still need to be disciplined. You still need, those kind of things. But how we go about our daily business may change a little bit, right? And you have to learn, and you have to learn. Everyone's different, right? Every person is different that comes through your program, and every athlete is different. What Adeline Gray needs is completely different than what Vicky Anthony needs, or Macy Kilty needs, or what Shakara Winchester needs. I mean, their needs are different, right? And you got to be able to read that and act accordingly, right? And I think that's, when I look back on the people that have been a huge influence on my career, and Coach Cable, well, the one thing that Coach Gable was so good at was keeping a certain standard within the program, but treating everyone as an individual, right? And giving the needs to each individual on that team. And he was really good at reading his athletes and people. And, I always admire that because, he had a certain standard that was there for everyone, but he paid each individual to what their needs were.
That's awesome. Thank you. This is really cool. And this is probably a good question for all the coaches. How have you switched from being we've all switched from being an athlete to being a coach, and athletes tend to have maybe a little bit more of a need to have that ego to drive their success, to like a healthy ego. How do you channel that healthy ego as an athlete into dropping that ego a little bit when you start to get into coaching? How do you start that process?
Well, I think you come in, I think probably a lot of young coaches come in and they think they know everything, right? I think they can fix every problem, right? And I think you realize very quickly that you need other people around you, right? And you don't know everything, and you got to figure that out. So I think it's constantly, like you said, learning and you're constantly learning, from situations, from your competitors, from other coaches, from your athletes. I mean, I was very fortunate, I think, as a young head coach with the women's program. I had a young lady by the name of Patricia Miranda, who was a lot smarter than me, right? And maybe I knew a little bit more wrestling than her at the time, but that's about all I could say I knew more of, right? And I think, she made me such a good coach because when I came into the program, she had so many questions, and I knew she was too smart. I couldn't come into the practice room and try to BS her. She'd see right through it, right? I needed to have answers. So she had so many questions that I had to come in really prepared to the practice room, and she just made me a better coach, right? Because I had to be able to explain things and get down deep into the weeds on things to help her understand things. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that was early on in my career. And I think she really helped me a lot.
And Coach Zadick has just joined us. Better late than ever to the party, Coach. It's so good to have you with us, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry for the tardiness. Got caught up with some legal minutia getting ready for these trials. Lots going on. But
no, I'm not surprised, Coach, and we do appreciate you joining in with us. We've just been talking a little bit about just preparation for the trials, how Coach Steiner is approaching it from his perspective, et cetera. And so I think maybe if you could lend us some perspective on just how you're going into this with what your expectations are, what you'd kind of like to see from the team at this point in time. Anything from the personal component to the team is fair game. So feel free to comment on any of that.
Yeah. Well, just catching the tail end of what Terry was saying, I think I see a lot of philosophical things similar to him. And so I'm sure he gave you great answers, and hopefully it's not too redundant. But, stepping into the trials, our men's freestyle model is a little bit different than the women's model, where we're a little more decentralized, and I don't see my athletes quite as frequently. And so a lot of communication, with personal coaches, with the individuals leading up. But going into the trials, of course, I'm from a performance standpoint, I want to see proficiency. I want to see, I would refer to like compulsory positions, right? Compulsory is more of a gymnastics term, but when you think about international wrestling, there are compulsory tactics and positions that we all have to be masters of, holding the center of the mat, shot clock, edge of the mat, parterre offense and defense, just basic, those kind of things. I'm looking for really high level proficiency. And then we want to see points production, right? And so it's still a bit of an evaluation, of course. We've seen our athletes compete a little bit, and this year is a little bit of an anomalous year with the pandemic. where we don't have as much going into the trials as we typically do. But yeah, I'm still evaluating, and we're going to sit and watch our team. We know what the rest of the world has. We've done our scouting, and as we see those athletes make the team and who emerges, we'll evaluate each of them individually, and then work with their personal coaches to develop a plan that is going to best address their needs and get them to the top of that podium in Tokyo. Yeah, it's a real interesting time in that regard.
We'll dial in just a few minutes towards the end of the podcast a little bit more about how to actually watch the competition, since we have such limited spectators that will be available at the site. But my question to both of you guys, I guess at this time, is if you're a young aspiring coach, certainly it's great to watch this, but what should young coaches look for? What would be some of the takeaways? Maybe how to evaluate the coaches and evaluate the athletes as well in lining this big picture up. So what would you tell if you were talking to the coaches that were maybe more than just a spectator, how to approach this?
I'll start. There's so many different things to look at, right? And I think that when I look at it just from a program standpoint. First I want to see how everything is just presented, right? How is women's wrestling presented at the trials compared to men's freestyle wrestling? Right? Is it presented in a way that's equal? Is it as an advocate for women's wrestling, I want to make sure that we're getting the right visuals out there to people, right? So how is it presented to the public? How is it presented on TV? Those are the things that I'm going to be looking at from that standpoint. Right? Is it presented the right way? Are our athletes giving people a product that they want to see? Right? Are they handling wins and losses right? Are they helping grow the sport, or are they holding it back? Right? Those are things that I want to make sure that we're representing the sport, not just themselves, and they need to know that. So from the program standpoint, I want to make sure the representation is good and everything like that. That's one thing. From a coach's standpoint, I want to make sure that I'm going to be watching what our personal coaches and our club coaches and things like that, the people in the corner with our athletes, do they know the rules? Right? Do they understand them? Are they throwing the blocks at the right times? Are they treating the athletes the right way? Right? When they win or lose, how are they talking to those athletes? Are they yelling and screaming? Are they, helping those athletes grow from the experience, winning or losing? Right? I want to make sure that those coaches are understanding that. Are they on board with what's going on? Do they know the trial system? Do they know the camps coming up and things like that? Do they know what's coming for the rest of the summer? Whether their athlete makes the team or doesn't make the team? Do they know the things to be involved in? So those will be some questions, and some maybe making sure those coaches do know that. From an athlete perspective, first and foremost, I want to know that we have a pretty good process of winning. What are we doing? How are we making weight, right? What does that look like? Do we have our personal coaches set up? Do we have our workout partners set up? The things that you assume that once people get to this level that they are looking at those things and understanding them, but you know what assume means, right? We don't want to assume anything, right? And so we want to make sure that their warm-ups are right, their cool downs are right. After weigh-ins, what are they bringing their nutrition? How are they rehydrating? How are they re-nutritioning themselves? Are they getting nutrition throughout the day, right? What kind of environment do they need in between matches, right? What are those people doing in between matches to get ready for the next match? Are they doing a cool down? You know, do they have the right people around them to get them back centered and back to the competition mat? I mean, so I want to see that first, and then like Coach Zadick said, you know, you want to make sure that they're proficient in what they do in those important areas, whether technically or tactically. You know, do we have our go-to attacks, right? Do we have our basic defenses and you know, our edge of the mat stuff, our shot clock? Are we handling that the right way? How, you know, and then just emotionally, like what happens to them? Are they getting shook if they get thrown to their back, right? Are they getting shook? Can they shrug that off and get back to their feet and get back to business? Or is it gonna take the match from them just because something happened earlier? Is it gonna throw them off the whole time? So, you know, wrestling with a lead, wrestling from behind, you know, can we do that in the right way? How are we handling ourselves in those situations? I think are important. So there's so many things from the athlete perspective that, you know, we can take from the trials and move forward but there's so much more to learn from the situation than that. And then you're also looking at the pipeline, right? You're looking at those young athletes that maybe came in. You know, I always came up to me a few times already. You know, Kelsey Campbell in 2008, she talks about when she came to the Olympic trials, she was just happy to be at weigh-ins. She was just happy to be there. 4 years later, she was on our Olympic team, right? And the difference in the growth that the experience of being at the Olympic trials and how that broadened her horizons and how that experience gave her some direction and start helping her make the right decisions and making better decisions and to develop and to, you know, put her career on a different trajectory, right? And 4 short years later, she's on our Olympic team, right? And in the meantime, she made a couple of world teams as well. So it really changed her. But she said, you know, in 2008, I was just happy to be there. So, and you know that there's going to be some athletes that come into the trials that, you know, they're just happy to be there, and that's okay. But the experience of it, help them learn through that, right? Help them deal with every situation, learn from every experience at the trials so you can get better from it. And that's the most important thing, right? And not everyone is there to win. We assume that, but I don't think really when it comes right down to it, there's probably some that are getting the experience for next time, right? And so let's make sure our pipeline is learning the right things and developing the right way from the experience, and that's an important thing as well. So again, there's so many things to learn from it, you know. So it's a busy weekend, even though you're not, you know, in the corners coaching athletes or dealing with athletes directly. There's so many things to learn from the experience. So.
Sounds exhausting.
It's a good position to be in, but it's just a busy weekend. Mentally, you know, I leave the Olympic trials usually just mentally tired, right? Because there's so many things you're thinking about, and you know, and there's so many ups and downs because these athletes are like kids too, you know, and you feel for each one of them whether they're winning or losing, and that takes its toll. I always remember my mom, you know, at the end of my career and my brother's career, my mom had a really hard time because we never won at the same time, right? And she was just done. She just said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I understand it, right? I mean, I understand the ups and downs of it. It's heartbreaking at times. And, you know, wrestling is so, you know, when this sport slaps you in the face, it slaps really hard, right? And you know, it leaves that mark, and it definitely it definitely affects you, and it can affect you. But then the highs are so high, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? That's what makes the Olympic Games so special, right? And the Olympic trials such a special thing. It's hard to succeed, but when you do, it's a great thing too. Right? So, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to that. You know, just to kind of summarize, I mean, I think Terry there's a lot to it, and I think you put it very well. From a performance standpoint, and as a coach and as an athlete, you're paying attention to the details, and details matter. They're important, and the sooner that you're paying attention to the details, the better it becomes, because they become instinctual, right? And so you're still paying attention to them, but they move into your subconscious mind. And so as we get closer to the event, we're more focused on just the performance side of it. And there's just a tremendous amount, right, for a coach and for an athlete. And yeah, the challenges, that's one of the things that Terry was just touching on that I was thinking of on a personal level. I think he's done a great job. The Greco team's done a great job, and men's freestyle is coming along to where we have depth, and it bodes very well for our team, right? There's these, potential epic matchups that we're going to see. And I think it bodes very well for who the ultimate representative will be for Team USA. But there's a lot of challenge there too, because we've been through it as individuals, as competitors. We've been through it as coaches. What these athletes put into the competition. What their personal coaches, the RTC coaches, the collegiate programs put into it. And so as much jubilation as you have for the guys that win, there's going to be some heartache for the ones that stay home. And so you just have to maintain perspective with that, right? But that's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of a tug of war, because you put a lot of effort and you see the effort that they put into it too. But because of that, in my opinion, I think you really have to take the joy in the successes, because when it, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and because it's combative, it's very personal, it's very intimate. You connect very viscerally with your performance. And so, yeah, it's tough. It'll be a challenging weekend. I think there's going to be some great wrestling and a lot of action to learn from. And but we definitely want to celebrate the team that comes out of it.
The one picture that comes to my head, when Bill's talking about this is when you think back at Dave Schultz lifting up and carrying Kenny Monday.
Yeah.
That they were heartbroken not being the team, right? But he put that behind him and helped Kenny accomplish his goal of being Olympic champion, right? And that's just such a visual.
Sorry, I think we lost a little bit, Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a moment.
Yeah. It takes a very strong individual to be able to move ahead of that, right? Move past that, and then still be hoping for your competitor to, ultimately do the best, which is, it's really a pretty noble achievement on Dave's part.
Right.
To want to see Kenny get his hand raised, right? And ultimately elevated Dave too, but that's an uncommon perspective.
Yeah, I happened to be at that competition, and it set me back at that moment and really made me think a lot about my young coaching career that was ahead of me. And it was absolutely an eye-opening experience to watch that take place. And every time, just like bringing it up here on this podcast, that every time that comes up, it really does elicit emotional responses that's what this sport is all about. And Dave was certainly that icon that brought that to light, that how a special occasion this is, and the trials and what it actually means. It's bigger than any one individual.
This next question might be a little bit like asking a parent who their favorite kid is. So maybe it's not super fair, but for our fans, are there one or two weight classes that you are like, you just better not miss these matches? Because we're going to make sure folks can know how to watch it online and stuff later.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 18 of them, right? No, and I mean, I've heard Rich say this multiple times, is and I think it's a testament to Terry and what he's done in building the women's program, testament to our RTCs and what's going on in the men's freestyle side and in the constituents on the Greco side, the WCAP, the military programs. This may be the best Olympic trials of all time in American wrestling, right? So I think, there's every weight class is going to be super hotly contested, and there's just a kind of an embarrassment of riches on accolades within those. I mean, of course, on our side of things, we have, some super high, generational type competitors that will be facing each other in two key weight classes at 74 and 97. We have the potential for multiple world gold medalists to face each other, right? And so that's going to be, it's mind-boggling to think about. But when you look at the other weight classes, the depth is there. And you're talking, we're getting ready for seeding next week. And as I'm looking at the registration and the qualifiers, it's like, we're talking NCAA champions and multiple NCAA champions and age group cadet and junior world medalists, all the way down to like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, right? It's really going to be incredible wrestling all the way through the competition. And like I said earlier, it does bode well for who ultimately identifies himself as a representative. We know that person's going to be battle tested, but I think there's going to be a lot of great wrestling. I'm super excited that NBC's picking it up and is going to broadcast the whole thing, like Mike alluded to. I don't know if you have a specific time to talk about that later, but on the streaming service with Peacock and then NBC Olympics for the 2 out of 3, I just think a great opportunity for our sport to move the needle forward and to come out of the pandemic and show what a great product we do have. And it's really exciting. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of action and there's a lot of great skill being displayed out on the mat. And it's, I think it's really going to be an exciting time.
That's great.
Coach,
and fans can check that out. Themat.com has all the information on the broadcast by NBC, as well as tickets if you're still in the Fort Worth area wanting to go to the event. So that's great.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Probably wrap it up here pretty quick, Coach. And I know that we having some technical difficulties bringing Coach Steiner back in on the call, so you'll have to be our go-to on this one. Just as a national team's coach, going into this competition, what do you see as your major role as you are there in attendance, watching and evaluating this process? What's your major role?
Well, obviously we're not in corners, right? We're a neutral party, but I think many of the things that Terry already mentioned earlier is you're watching the process. You're watching what's going on. How do athletes make weight? How are they feeling? How are they looking? Are they being consistent with the process that we have known that's been successful for them until this point? Are they recovering? Are they refueling? We're looking at evaluating anything and everything that can aid them in our pursuit for the rest of the summer, right? And so, of course, we're identifying the Olympians, the 6 that will represent our style in Tokyo. But many of these competitors are going to compete for a spot on the world team later this year, right? So there's development and there's more than just the 6 that are going on, right? And then from a rules perspective, from just an event management, our team does a great job. Rich, Pete Isaias, is a veteran in running events, but you're looking at the officiating, you're looking at the flow of the event and making sure that everything's running as smoothly as possible to make sure that our athletes have the opportunity to identify themselves, right? And ultimately they'll go out and decide who's the best when the whistle blows. But that's a lot of it. From my perspective is just watching what's happening, noting significant things and sometimes new trends or new things will emerge and tracking that so that we can duplicate the best things and eliminate any liabilities as we move through the summer from a performance standpoint and beyond.
It looks like we got Terry back. Any closing thoughts, Terry?
No, I think Bill said it. It's going to be a great event, right? And you're going to have some great things to watch and great competitiveness and some. You're going to see some great sportsmanship too. It's going to be just a great event to watch, and it'll be real, right? It's going to be real in front of you. There's going to be heartbreak. There's going to be jubilation with victories, but it's going to be real.
Well, gentlemen, I can't tell you how much I really appreciate Coach Steiner, Coach Zadick. Always it's a great time to visit with you, and it's certainly in this situation, getting ready for this big major competition, even more excitement added to the flame here. So we thank you guys for joining in on the podcast. I know that our coaches that are listening are going to get a lot out of this message. It means a lot to have you guys join in on us, and we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mike Clayton.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Coach Mike Clayton, thank you again. As always, I'm Mike Hegarty. And again, for Heads Up Podcast and the Coaches Council, we'll talk to you next time.